Hello and welcome to ETAuto. I'm Nabeel Khan, and today we are going to discuss, is Indian automotive industry on the road to recovery? I have here with me an assorted bouquet of speakers. Let me introduce to you Mr. Arun Malhotra, a very well-known face who has been the managing director of Nissan India also and a veteran in automotive industry. We have Mr. Pankaj Dubey, who is MD and CEO of Polaris India and Indian Motorcycles. We have Vinay Piparsania. He is an expert on Indian automotive space. We have Mr. Sunil Arora, who is the MD and CEO of Abilities India Pistons. We have Garima Misra ji, who is leading India as one of the biggest automotive retail space. She deals with 7 automotive brands, which includes Honda, Volkswagen and others. So let's begin the discussion. The biggest question today is, as the industry is reeling under pressure for quite some time, this is probably one of the worst and most prolonged. Do you think the India's automotive story has set to begin again? Do you think we have seen green shoots now?
Too early to say. I would call this a new dawn, but it's a misty dawn. The season, a lot of expectations were there. I think most of the expectations have not been fulfilled. Companies have been very aggressive on the ground in terms of rolling out schemes also. So sales did improve. But if you look at what was the expectation vis-a-vis the festival season, definitely nowhere near there. So most of the segments are still on the same level as they were last year, except the small commercial vehicle where we see clearly improvements happening in growth of 10 to 12%. But it's early days, because I think the bigger issue is still more on the economy in the upcountry markets and the rural markets, which is still to revive, whether it's agriculture, whether it's small scale enterprises. Until that happens, I don't think we can see a dramatic improvement.
Yeah, I think the similar views. The market right now is in a stage where it's very difficult to predict which way it is going. We are hoping that it improves, but what we see on ground right now is just mild improvements. And it's not just about the auto industry. It's because that if you see the entire economy, whether it is real estate or telecom or other industries like textile, tea, states, everywhere we see a slowdown. So the overall impact is also affecting the customers who have probably less disposable income, and that's indirectly affecting our business. So the concern is very right that but this is the time when we have to be at our best, having the lean management and learnings in this time of improvement, and a lot of actions have to be taken to sustain ourselves at this time. I think we have to maintain our things right now.
Let's look at it two ways. One is from an analytical point of view, and then the second is from an actual qualitative point of view. Analytically, if you see month over month, quarter by quarter, that kind of benchmarks that you're using would be always historic. But moving forward, based upon the revised adjustments that have to be made in the forecast, versus that, are we on plan? Versus that, are the things recovering based upon the tracking with the economic factors, tracking with the exchange rates, the interest rates, all that? We're seeing that the industry is now adjusting. And that adjustment takes some time. You can't expect it to do month over month. Give it some time, let the interest rates, let the exchange rates do their work, and all this will start to settle down. So what we're seeing right now is a settling down. Yes, we are expecting too much from seasonal factors, but if we go by the revised normal, then the seasonal effect is actually kicked in. And therefore, we're going to see a lot of a recovery because the market is now adjusting to the new normal. On a qualitative standpoint, we're seeing discounts, we're seeing campaigns, we are seeing more and more experiential offers out there for customers to try out. We're seeing new models, and new models are doing their things. So the business is going about in its normal way. No need to panic, but we definitely need to adjust.
So I would say that there are responsibilities which lie at the doorstep of the government and at the doorstep of the OEMs, and of course the component manufacturers will follow suit. But here is what I think. The government has to start talking about BS6 in a larger perspective, in a larger framework, and not just go about saying all things about electric vehicles all the time. I think all that has been overstated, and that has definitely led to confusion in the market. The customer is confused. So that is one short way that the government has to help. The other thing, of course, is that the government has to step in at an appropriate time for the GST rate cut, which has been a demand for the last few months, and probably has to come in at an appropriate time when the BS6 models are being introduced. And these 5-6 months are very critical now, till 31st March 2020. This is where everything, we have the BS4 models being made, but you want them to go up in sales, and then the BS6 coming in, so the government has to step in to absorb part of that cost which will be coming in because of the BS6. The OEMs on their part also have a big role to play, discounts, etc. Maybe put in more discounts. You have to get the customer interest back into automobiles. The finance minister said it's because of the Olas and the Ubers. Well, India is a very big country, so for a couple of lakh Olas and Ubers to affect automobile sales, so the interest has to be brought back, the sentiment has to be brought back, and that will happen with the right steps taken. Of course, they've introduced a few steps about the fiscal incentives, but there are more steps like the GST rate cut. The auto component manufacturers, we have to cut costs, we have to become lean, we have to focus on exports, and we have to not put our expansions on hold, especially for new technologies, patent bringing in technologies. That is what the auto component manufacturers need to do.
So when we talk about improvement or recovery, I think they are comparatives. When if I would look at a comparison of year on year, then yes, it's not the same. For example, if I just talk about the festival period, comparing festival period or Navratris and Dussehra of last year vis-a-vis this year, then we are approximately 16% down. But if I talk about month on month, then I have amazed. I mean, the kind of growth that we've had in this October is close to 70% of what we had done in the first 10 days of September. So is there recovery? Well, if I look at month on month, yes, surely it's looking good. But if I look on year, maybe it's not that good. But the economic scenario per se, whether the interest rates, whether we talk about a very good monsoon, whether we talk about continuous SIP flows, everything's positive. Everything's looking positive. The government is also looking at it positively. I think people will also soon realize that this is the time to buy. Because most manufacturers, we deal with 7 manufacturers, and most of them will, post-Diwali, reduce their manufacturing, which would mean that whatever is the stock is what will sell in BS4, and post-January, most of them will start manufacturing BS6 cars. So if a customer is thinking that he will get the best deal on the 30th of March, then probably he's in a fallacy. It is high time, it is very soon that he will start realizing that manufacturers clearly know that what the verdict is on the 1st of April, and for once they have started preparing themselves well in advance. This is the time to buy, this is the time, and I'm very sure that soon, very soon, as he just said, that we'll be more talking about BS6, people understanding what is the implication, the recovery should be seen shortly.
So those were the initial comments from our experts panel. Before we get into the now nitty-gritty of this recovery, if this is happening or not, we see a lot of positive, a lot of hopes, but still there are some glimpses that we still see that is going to exist. And you talked about a comparison of month on month. I think these are not the right way to compare, because these are 2 different months, different kind of demands come up, especially in a festive season. Vinay, I would like to come to you. Do you think that this is a temporary, if there is a pickup, or do you think the situation is going to get worse because of the BS6 after BS6 is implemented? And do you suggest that, as Garima suggested, that people should go and buy right now, this is the best time, and why is it?
So clearly we all know that the auto industry is a very cyclical business, and that cycle follows a certain pattern. Now the cycle is getting shorter because there have been some impacts that are coming from the transition to Bharat 4 to Stage 6. How will it impact the stock that they currently are carrying? Well, clearly the government has mentioned that there will be no impact to people who have existing vehicles. So there should be no fear from anybody that whatever I have today is not going to be continued over the years ahead, or there'll be a drop in its resale value, or there'll be a drop in its fuel availability. Most automakers have already pulled ahead their BS6 productions, and most of the new models are already BS6 compliant. We have the fuel companies that have already issued out Bharat Stage 6 fuel. So the transition has started much earlier. And I think these are lessons that were learned from the previous transition that took place. So I think this is going to be far smoother than it was earlier. Is this the best time to buy? Look, if you need a vehicle, buy. And the idea is you don't have to wait. And the idea is that what we're talking about is mobility. And yes, there are different mobility options, they're different. So whatever is customers' preferences, go for your brand, go for the offers that are being made. Business as usual should be where we are headed.
So now I'd like to understand from you, Pankaj, we have seen generally the luxury segment doesn't get affected so easily, but this time we see around luxury brands like Mercedes, BMW, and your brand also seems to have gone through the slowdown. Is it rare, or you have seen these kind of impact earlier also?
No, I think this is very rare because at least in the segment that we are present, this has been growing rapidly in high double digit. Like we remember when we launched the first time the luxury superbikes in the country some 10 years back, and there was hardly any customer, and that has spiraled to almost like 80 times in just 10 years. And so it was always growing. I mean, we were just thinking that next year would be like 50% more, 70% more. And suddenly there's a grip where you see, we did face some challenges when the transition happened from BS3 to BS4, but then it recuperated and it went on again to start growing. But there has been a lot of changes of the policies which has actually affected the market. Maybe from a long-term perspective, these are all great decisions like GST, demonetization and all, but it has really slowed down the growth in the last 2-3 years. And right now what we are seeing, we have never seen before, at least in the industry that we are working in. So this is something which is unprecedented, and we hope that things will improve. There are mild improvements here and there, but we don't see overall very positive response as of now.
So those who have joined us live right now, you can ask your question. We have our experts talking about if there is a recovery in seen in short term or long term. We have just heard the experts saying this is the never seen before kind of gloom that the industry is embroiled into. I'll go to Mr. Malhotra on this. You were talking about some kind of recovery seen in some segment. Can you elaborate on that? And how is it going to further, influence the other segment of the business?
So, when there's so much dark cloud, you have to search for the silver linings. So the silver lining is small commercial vehicles. And small commercial vehicle is all focused on last mile connectivity. So there is a lot of economic activity, whether it's for the e-commerce companies or even a lot of construction activities which has started commencing. So that clearly is visible in the last 1 month. And I understand from manufacturers who are in the small commercial vehicle segment that September was about 15 to 20% higher than in the same period last year. And now they're expecting a very good October. But having said that, that's just a very small part of the segment. And I want to focus on a big problem which is on the dealer network. The dealerships are in a great pain. One side you have companies pushing stocks. The other side you have increasing marketing expenses. Third side, you have customers asking for more discount, and this all is leading to a vicious cycle. And fourth is the banking system, which has become very conservative in terms of wholesale financing. In terms of retail financing, it's slightly better. So that system has started cracking, and a lot of dealerships in small towns and bigger towns have started cracking. Some have closed down, they may be few. But the number of dealerships which are under stress and strain, which are under losses, is very high. To me, that's a big concern area. Because even when the recovery comes, if the network becomes slow, our distribution, our reach, our ability to reach to customer will get impacted adversely.
I'll come back to you, Garima. We have seen the finance minister talking about, there's no liquidity crunch, but the industry has been insisting. Banks are also saying that there are enough cash in the system. Do you feel that this is the right statement, or you feel otherwise?
So till last month, we were facing 20% cancellations only because of finance. So what was happening is that 20% customers who actually booked a car could not buy it because they wouldn't get financial approvals. This month, it's become a little better. Till now, that rate has gone down to 7%, which is, in my mind, a good space to be in. Also, there are some positive notes that are happening. For example, a brand like Mercedes delivered 200 cars on a single Dussehra day, which I really feel that with the luxury market showing those kind of signs, that's really nice. Then there was an article where superbikes have grown four-folds, which is from 5,000 last year YTD till to 23,000 this year YTD. These are positive signs. Honestly, I think, as someone said, that having hope is better than having no hope. So I would look at these positive factors, and I would like to keep my hope really high that things are going to come back very soon.
Thank you, Garima. We also keep a lot of hope. Pankaj, do you think you have seen that kind of growth in luxury segment, or?
No, not in the superbike because we deal in 1000cc and above, and it's definitely not there. Maybe when Garima is pointing to that, it's accumulation of some other or maybe some information because she also doesn't deal with it, so it's just hearsay. I don't see any great growth happening in the superbike industry in the last few months. It's actually degrowing, and it's degrowing not in a very healthy manner. So it's like whether it is all the players in the segment are under huge stress. What we see is that this is like this industry has seen a growth of like phenomenal growths, like from something which is like 100 motorcycles to 6,000 motorcycles, and suddenly there is a drop of 15-20%. I would say that's more of an adjustment because it cannot be that you have a dream run continues forever. So I won't say that it's current sentiments are down definitely, and that's because of the overall sentiments in the economy. But the moment the overall sentiments improve, I see that the motorcycle segment is bound to grow in India in the next decade or two at least.
We generally go on and put everything on sentiments. Pankaj, I would beg to differ here. Do you think it is just sentiment? You look at the GDP growth that we had, about 5%. Again, the projection for full year has come down to 6.1%. Look at the FMCG sector. The other, sector, entire, PSUs going down. Do you think it's still a sentiment?
No, see, basically, overall economy has to improve. The market sentiments are based on all the sectors. Like we see right now, whether real estate, banking, textile, automobile, everything is under the slowdown. So it is affecting the sentiments also, where people are just worried whether I should buy right now or not. With the BS6, there's a more confusion also whether I should buy BS6. The government may say you can't ply it on the road because it's BS4. Or electric vehicles, so much has been talked about that maybe government will ban electric vehicle. So there's so many things which are there, but at the same time, sentiments play a big role. I mean, if you have the income level, luxury market has really grown in the country, and it is right now at a very small percentage of what it should be. So the moment there are positive sentiments, where they see the slight improvement in the economy, people have income, they would go in something like what you see in a 200 Mercedes being sold in a single day. So those are all like people, the moment the first sentiments will come, luxury segment will the first segment that will be back on track. That's what I said.
So those who have just joined in, before I go to next question, please post your questions in the comment box. You can identify your speakers or the experts whom you want that question to be answered. I want to understand one thing, Vinay, from you. We have seen that we are talking about the recovery that could happen. He just pointed out, Malhotra ji, that there is a silver lining that we need to identify. What are the other silver lining do you see in terms of when it comes to recovery, or do you see that this is going to prolong, and how long do you see this slowdown to prolong?
Okay, so let's talk about new models. And I think if there's something that's really, which took a backseat in the planning by most OEMs and other manufacturers, is to be agile enough to start changing the product portfolio. We are now seeing more trend. The trend is very clear that petrol is now becoming a preferred choice. We are now seeing that automatic, for example, is now a preferred choice. We're seeing that in two-wheelers, performance, connectivity, and more features that are making the ride experience safer as well as more pleasurable and connected is what's going to be better. We've seen a lot of features that have got added to the car mandatorily. Like you got now ABS is there, you got combined braking systems, you got other safety like airbags. All of these have added to the cost, but the vehicles are much safer. So the point is, a lot of the energy has gone into that, but have lost sight of trying to upgrade these products to be more appealing to the new generation of buyers. That's where a slowdown has happened. That adjustment is going to take some time. So when we see I see the green shoots of new products taking a leap, the booking numbers and the payments, even the electric vehicles. I mean, there's a lot of interest, but the product must deliver. The product must now move over to the next generation of buyers who are very keen. The banks must adapt to financing those requirements. Sales, is it only about purchasing, or do we now get into rentals? Do we now get into subscriptions? There's a whole new approach that needs to be made. That adjustment has to also start.
So what Vinay is pointing to is the cost increment in the product. But if we look at the kind of inflation we have seen, I don't see the cost of vehicles and the kind of features we have given in the vehicles, I don't see that there has been major jump in the cost. What are the other culprit you find for the this worst kind of slowdown that we have seen?
One thing which is hidden, a lot of people say that we have the GST in the auto industry. I would beg to disagree, because at a time when it was not a very politically good decision to take, road tax and registration was kept out of the GST. And what a number of state governments have done, Jammu Kashmir, Punjab, Andhra, they've increased the road tax from 5% to 10%, 12%. So effectively one side you have hit because of safety norms, cost increase, other side because of the transition from BS4 to BS6. And on the third side, you have this taxation going up, not in the form of GST, but in road tax. So that three is impacting. Now, I just want to say one thing. The main pain is at the entry level. So you don't see much activity happening at the two-wheeler segment, neither at the entry-level car segment. The entry-level cars numbers sold in the last 3 months is historically all-time low. It's something what was done 10 years back. You will see some activity where competition is getting products in the 9 to 13 lakh. There are 2-3 products which have done very well, whether the Kia Seltos or whether it's a Hyundai Venue. But that is a different segment, and even that sales has come at the cost of some other brands. So effectively, it's not been a net increase in sales. So I think the bigger challenge that the Indian auto industry is grow is the mass segment, which is a two-wheeler. We used to talk of 20 lakhs, 2 million two-wheelers a month. That was our aspiration. And we used to talk of 3 lakhs of passenger vehicles. Effectively, we are struggling on 220. Till the entry level, the below 5 lakh cars and the entry level motorcycles improve, the overall sentiment is, and that is what defines the overall market. At the upper end, there will be numbers, there will be excitement, there will be a lot of media talk, but they don't really change the direction of the industry. That's the way I see it.
This answer can further be, strengthened. Sunil ji, you are the people who start the supply when some car makers are, looking at product launch or how are they going to produce. Looking at your order books, how do you assess the situation? And if some steps you want the government to take or the OEMs to take, what would be those?
Okay, so now we are primarily, our business is 49% two-wheelers, 1% lawn and garden, which nobody does in India, and 10% braking compressors. Now, as far as I can answer your question for the two-wheelers. The two-wheeler OEMs are looking at innovation, period. If you can innovate and get some new products on the shelf, so we've brought in 2 patented technologies in our piston and ring manufacturing, and that it's sold off the block totally, whether in India or overseas. So those are the kind of things that the OEMs are.
Auto component space, how do you
So overall auto component space, as you know, overall is down. But as I said in my opening remarks, if you are export-oriented companies, like we have 45% exports, we are not affected. From April to September, we've grown 9%, which is an anomaly probably in this kind of scenario. But the real thing that you need to see is that we've had these cyclical downturns every 5 or 6 years since 1997 or 98. So it's nothing new that we are facing. The auto component industry knows our profits as a whole are probably down for the first 6 months. But we are very well accustomed to this kind of a slowdown. But the fact is that this is a very prolonged slowdown.
Last you experienced
2000
30% slowdown.
Well, it never happened. Never happened.
How are you calling it a cyclical?
Well, the point is, whether slowdowns are 10% or 15%, and that's what I said again in the opening remarks, that this slowdown has been, aggravated or exacerbated by a combination of factors, which one need not go into again and again. But the government has a very major role to play in this, bringing back the sentiment. We were talking about sentiment earlier. Auto purchases are based on sentiment. The entry-level guy has run away. He is not enthused. you have to bring him back to bring the auto component and the auto industry back into motion. And if those motorcycle numbers, which were 2 million plus a month, have to go up to, the automotive mission plan says that we should be manufacturing by 2026 50 lakh two-wheelers a year. Well, so we have to get there, and it is going to happen. But then it's the government's responsibility primarily, and we've seen this happening in China. We've seen this happening in other countries as well. The government opens its purses at the right amount of time for a limited period of time and brings the sentiment back. And that is what is needed. And similarly, in the auto component space, as I said, that we are all tightening our belts. We are going back to basics and cutting costs. But it is a slowdown, which is perhaps the first time that has prolonged for such a long time. And as collectively, we think it's going to prolong probably for the next 10, 12 months.
So next 10 to 12 months, that's what we see. Garima, I would like to come back to you. How do you see the inquiries and conversion to sales at your dealerships right now?
So this month particularly, inquiries are really up. It's very positive. That's why I was saying that I'm positive, because all signs are positive, not only the numbers, but even at the inquiry level, the inquiries are up. The walk-ins, which had completely diminished, have suddenly started coming back to the showrooms, which is what I'm feeling is positive. The conversion ratios are mostly hovering around the same 15-16%, depending on brand to brand. They're largely the same. But the fact of the matter is that without investing so much of money into marketing, the inquiries are back is a very, very positive sign, and I look at it very positively. So again, my sentiment surely is very, very positive at this point of time. As you rightly said that, so what we have to look at is a change that's happening. So yes, the entry level is out, but then what is happening? Today, if you look at this year, then the AOO segment is similar to AO hatch. So is it the change in preference? So let's not look at just the number in AO segment which is going down. It is possible that the customer now is not wanting that entry level car. He's very ready to go for the next level, which is where you see it. So I mean, should we look at it as a whole? Should we break it up into smaller pieces and then understand what's happening? That is a call that we all have to take.
Just one thing I'd like to add. If you look at the one thing which has happened, this India was a big story that it will be a small car market, international market. And the small car market did grow. But if you look at the prices now, the entry level motorcycle starts at 32,000 rupees. And the entry level car, I'm talking AC, not non-AC. Non-AC is advertised by a lot of manufacturers but never sold. Yeah. It starts at 3,05,000. The ratio is 8:1 or 8.5:1. It's a historic all-time high. And this extends to 3.5 lakhs to 4 lakhs. A customer who's on two-wheelers, who just has a dream and aspiration that for my family, for my safety, security, status, I need to move up. I just cannot imagine that from that 40,000, he will jump straight to 5 lakhs. The first-time buyers who already got cars in their families, or people who are from good institutions or getting jobs in the corporate world, they would go. For them, they would jump over. But the vast multitudes of people across small towns, that dream of the small car market is somewhat dwindling, and that if the economy goes back, and there's action at the economy level, at the small towns level, whether it's agriculture, whether it's shopkeepers, whether it's small entrepreneurs or traders, that will boost it. I think, and that's also impacting the two-wheeler. If you look at the entry-level motorcycles, they're not doing well at all. And they haven't had much positive response on this. So I believe masses, if you have to see, you have to focus on entry level. There will be a lot of excitement. People will get fascinated at 8 lakhs, 10 lakhs, unique features. There will be action, and probably the revival will be better, because those people holding their decision, they have the money. But people whose dreams and aspirations there, that is something the dream has to turn to reality. That's what I see.
If we talk about we have seen that there's a upgrade in terms of average car price. So I don't think the damage that we see in terms of volume and in terms of valuation, there's a bit of a difference, I guess. That's what. Now I think we are going to close this session, but one last comment from all of you. When do you see, what are the timeline you see, a very precise answer that we can see recovery, and which are the areas where we will start? We'll start with Garima.
Why do I get this tough one? Very honestly, I personally feel that the beginning of 2021 is something that we should all look for the real predicted numbers, where we were talking about probably 3.5-4 lakh cars per month. For that kind of number to come back, 2021 is something that we will have to all wait for. So the year 2020 will be a year of patience and perseverance.
So, as we heard that a lot of the OEMs are now focusing towards exports, to sustain their operations and to grow. I think that is one another way to make the market grow, the whole pie grow, and get everybody into running their factories full time. But as far as the domestic market is concerned, definitely 10, 12 months, 18 months, something like that, 12 to 18 months. That is what I think when we're going to have the real action back.
Our research at Counterpoint, we also expect it to stabilize by 2021, and that's primarily with the government now getting its firm hold, getting its policies into action, allowing them to soak in, and then the consumer and the other FMCG and all of the white goods all stabilizing, and most importantly, most of the economic stimuluses that are being encouraged and being announced start kicking in. That's when all this would do. But one more thing I would like to say, for planning purposes, it's very important that we now keep tracking retails. Right. The reason why we fell into this trap was because we were looking at shipments, and there was a whole block of pipeline vehicles that were looked upon as sales. That's where the lag has really increased. To be more agile and to be more categorized and laser focused on categories, segments, features, it has to track actual retails. I think the whole market needs to get into that analysis in a much more consolidated way.
So I feel that the sentiments right now are, it's low, but it's very challenging times for us, and it's going to be more challenging from April 2020, because that's when BS6 norms get implemented, and we have seen that when the transition happened from BS3 to BS4 was very painful for OEMs, dealers, maybe something good for customers. But then it hurts in the long term. Such decisions hurts the organization, and also ultimately, if the stakeholders who have invested in the country don't make money, then it also affects the economy overall, and that's what we have seen. So what I would recommend is to have a very watchful eye on the implementation to Bharat Stage 6, and that is where the crux is, that if we make that transition very smooth and we make it efficient without hurting any OEMs or dealers, probably this business will, I will agree with Garima that 2021 is the earliest that we can see that the real growth can happen.
I like to say from a Hindi quote, there was a very gloom and doom, and people said, is raat ki subah nahi. I still would say, is raat ki subah hai, wo subah kabhi to aayegi. And as Garima mentioned, probably, and as Arora mentioned, it will come somewhere at the end of 2020. And I'm basing it on two factors. One, government is not in a denial mode now. It's moved out of the denial mode to an action mode. It takes time, as Vinay mentioned, to get it implemented. Second, the monsoon has been very good. Sometimes it's damaged, but the water reservoir levels are good, which bears good things for the next festival season, Rabi crop, and for the income. And tractor people are saying by the next April. And whenever the tractor industry improves, the rural economy improves. So I would go with Garima and Vinay and this thing. So I would put it 2020 December, so 2021 January. That's the way I look at it.
So what the experts agree that by 2021, early 2021, we can see the normal recovery or normal numbers that we were expecting to be achieved by Indian automobile industry. And what is going to drive is that the government has moved out of denial mode, and good monsoon supported by other factors will really help us. That's all from our experts panel. Thank you so much for taking out time and joining us at ETAuto Facebook Live. Stay tuned to ETAuto 4 for more analysis, news and experts.